What is going on? I would say welcome back to your daily dose of Celtics content, but I'd be lying because it's been probably about a month since the last time we done one of these. So now we're welcome back to your regular dose of Celtics content. A little bit of change to what we're going to do with this Vitamin C's feed. We're going to be running it every Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday for y'all. We're going to start today, so let's go right in. I'm joined by my boy, Mr. Tim Shields. You can see his name right there, at Tim Shields NBA. See my name right there, at Adam Taylor NBA. See this nice big amount of writing here. Subscribe for your regular dose of Celtics content. Hit that subscribe button. Tim, what's going on, dude?
Nothing much, man. Good to be back. Good to get back into the studio and record a little bit. So it's been a minute, so I'm happy to get back to it.
Yeah, I've been busy as hell. So if you're watching on YouTube, you don't know who I am. My name's Adam. That's all you need to know. Go to my YouTube, go to the rest of the places. You'll find out everything else you need to know. Now, anyway, because I'm just joking around a little bit, let's get serious. Ben Simmons. So there was a rumor out earlier today coming from Shams, which in my opinion came from the Sixers. It didn't come from Shams. Shams was just a mouthpiece. That the Celtics were interested in a trade for Ben Simmons, but Jaylen Brown would need to be included in any deal. Now, in my opinion, that is more the Sixers testing the waters on Jaylen Brown than it is the Celtics testing the waters on Ben Simmons. I mean, I understand from the Celtics point of view, Udoka's definitely basing his team on defense. You don't get much better in terms of perimeter defense than Ben Simmons. You definitely need more of a ball distributor. You don't get much better of a ball distributor than Ben Simmons. I'm not about to sit here and lie and say Ben Simmons is trash because, quite frankly, he's an elite player at what he does well. Unfortunately, he doesn't do the one thing the Celtics need the most at the moment, and that's shoot the free. And I think that's the biggest hard stop for me. Like, for me personally, when I'm looking at the Celtics team right now, 60% of Jason Tatum's struggles have come from the fact that there's not enough spacing to allow him to get to work. The other 40% come from off-ball movement, bad shot selection, growing pains as a distributor. And then you look at everything else that's going on at this roster at the moment, and I just feel like adding Ben Simmons in and removing Jaylen Brown, who has been arguably, if not unequivocally, the Celtics' best player so far, that just seems like a backward step in terms of what the Celtics are trying to build right now. So while I do think Ben Simmons is a great player, I just don't think he has a great fit with the Celtics.
Well, I think if you're taking Jaylen Brown out of the situation and you're putting Ben Simmons in his place, then yeah, it doesn't make a lot of sense. If you're trying to run the three of them, so if you're running the two Jays with Ben Simmons, there's still issues with spacing. You're not going to get defensive drop-off with him, but again, you're looking at a situation where you need more shooters. So he doesn't really bring that to the table. He does fit that defensive profile that you would want in a third star. And maybe coming into a situation like Boston, the one thing I would say, the fans are probably going to be really toxic about it. And Lord knows the Boston media is really tough. It's very critical. They want to win titles here. Boston is a title town, so there comes a lot of pressure with that. So that being said, I don't know if it would make a lot of sense from that standpoint. Ultimately, it's just going to come down to cost. And I think this is a perfect example of Daryl Morey trying to pump the tires up on Ben Simmons' value and just gauging it out there and saying, they're not going to get him unless they want to give up Jaylen Brown. And we all know that's not going to happen. There's not really any kind of market for Ben Simmons. And granted, people would love to have Simmons to take that dice roll. But again, you're looking at a guy who's dealing with mental issues off the court right now, and he's trying to tackle that, not really being as respondent as he could be with the organization. And it seems like his teammates are genuinely done with him. And he's got a broken jump shot, which we've known for years. So there's a lot of things that kind of go against the grain of modern day NBA basketball. Ben Simmons has a lot of those traits, and it's just really how much can you pay for a guy like that? You're taking a risk when you bring him in. And I just don't think the Celtics would do that for Brown. Maybe if it's a different package, there are plenty of other players that you would probably rather have Ben Simmons over. So there's options.
I mean, my outlook on it is I wouldn't do the deal for Jaylen Brown. I just think that's a backward step in terms of spacing, in terms of talent. I'm not saying that Jaylen Brown's a better talent than what Ben Simmons is, but Jaylen Brown's talent fits better with the rotation that the Celtics have right now. Now, if you want to add Ben Simmons into that rotation and have Ben Simmons, Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum, all of a sudden my entire mind frame changes because neither Tatum or Brown have ever played with a distributor, a facilitator at Ben Simmons level, right? They're going to be getting quality looks that they've never had before because Ben Simmons is exceptional at running, driving kicks, really pressuring the rim, forcing defensive collapses, and then finding cutters or guys that are spotting up. So I do think in terms of quality of shots that were like quality shot production, I think that Ben Simmons would be the best fit along the two of them. Also, because he hardly ever looks for his own number. You don't have to worry about him trying to heat check because he isn't going to do it. You are going to get the occasional dunk, and you know, a lot of his shots do come around the rim, which is perfectly fine. If you don't want to run him at the 1, run him at the 4. And you know, I genuinely believe that Ben Simmons is more Draymond Green than anybody else. If not Draymond Green, maybe a little bit of Magic. But I do think that Ben Simmons fits really well with players like Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum around him. But if you're taking one of them away, well, now you're really putting an offensive pressure on Tatum's shoulders. He already gets expected to lead this team in points every night, in true shooting percentage every night. A lot's being asked of him in terms of production and in terms of efficiency. Removing somebody that provides him an enormous amount of gravity, who is also capable of shouldering that offensive load, and then replacing them with a non-shooter that I get it really, you know, we're talking a 6'10" Marcus Smart, but a bit better passing. It's not ideal now. So yeah, I'm all in if you want to put a package together and do something like what the Lakers did for Westbrook, where you move multiple rotation guys with a couple of high, like, you know, youngish, high upside dudes like the Lakers did with Kuzma to get Westbrook. You know, KCP was in that deal. Montrez was in that deal. The Celtics can do something like that. And Brad Stevens acquired some of this year's rotation for that very reason. If one of those trades do kind of put themselves forward, obviously that's not possible until January, towards the end, because of some of these contracts that were signed. But yeah, I'm not all against Ben Simmons. I'm just all against the Ben Simmons for Jaylen Brown trade.
Yeah, because I don't think that's even at all, just in terms of fit. And yeah, I think he really helps in terms of your passing, right? Like, he's going to be able to open up a lot more looks for guys just because he does have a really good basketball IQ when it comes to that. And as you said, he's not going to be a guy demanding shots almost to a fault, as we well know. But you're looking at a guy who brings a lot of really good defense. He's a really, really solid defender, really smart basketball player. It's just a matter of whether or not you can get the most out of him and where he's at mentally. And if you're looking at a potential trade of maybe moving a guy like Marcus Smart, because apparently there seems to be friction issues so far. I don't know if you saw Jason Tatum's comments in his post game the other night, but they don't seem thrilled that he came out and spoke to the media. And this is not me pushing any kind of agenda or anything like that. It's just acknowledging the fact that maybe there are some shakeups coming. Brad Stevens has said as much, like, we're going to find out if this group works together or not. And it's not time to pull the chute just yet. And I don't think, from what it seems like, I mean, Mark Murphy came out and shot this rumor down almost immediately. Like, within the hour, Mark Murphy said that these reports about Ben Simmons and the Celtics were untrue. Now, take that with the biggest grain of salt, because I don't think that Shams is completely, you know, unattached to any kind of rumors. And I do think that the 76ers were fueling that. But I have no doubt that the Celtics at least had a minor conversation. I think that's just everyone doing their due diligence, because Ben Simmons is that potential star. Like, you're adding him into an equation where you have two other, like, all-star caliber players. If you have the right guys and there's the right fit, like, you can get him to flourish even more than he already has. It's just a question of whether or not Morey is going to bring that price down, because right now it seems sky high, and I really doubt anyone's going to reach that. I mean, you're asking for guys who actually can help your offense right now in terms of shooting. Not a lot of people are going to try and spend assets on a guy who's dealing with all the stuff that Simmons is dealing with and having those mental issues.
I mean, for me, like, the biggest thing I kind of preach to everybody is don't expect the lowest offer to be the best offer either. Like, so, you know, like you mentioned Marcus Smart being part of that deal. Completely understand Marcus Smart could be a part of that deal for salary matching purposes, but the deal will not be centered around Marcus Smart. And that's where my mentality is. Like, the 76ers are not rebuilding. They're not looking to blow it up. So picks don't really entice them too tough unless they feel like they can package them for a different move some point throughout the season. They're not going to be looking to hold in on to draft picks. It just doesn't make sense for where they are in their development. So they're going to be looking for what team can give us the best package that helps us win now. Now, one of the things that I will say is, like you mentioned, teams aren't going to want to give up scoring for non-scoring. Now, obviously, some teams will, because they'll feel like Ben Simmons' defensive ability and playmaking ability actually make them better without the scoring. But for me, I feel like Ben Simmons has been miscast his entire time in Philadelphia. He's played the role of a second star, and the reason his non-shooting ability, or his lack of shooting development, probably is the better way to say it, is such a prominent discussion point, is because around Joel Embiid, you need shooters, which means your number 2 guy, your second best player, or your 1A and 1B, needs to be an exceptional shooter in order to generate the best out of Embiid. And Simmons has never done that. The fit hasn't really worked there. Now, if you go and put Ben Simmons in a rotation that does have Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum, because by some miracle you figured out a deal that kept both of them guys in Boston, well, Simmons' lack of shooting ability or lack of shooting progression isn't really as prominent anymore, because you don't need him to shoot. You need space. You need shooters around him, guys that can attack off the rip through, so they can benefit off his playmaking ability. So while I think a lot of teams are very intrigued by him because of what he brings to the table for their other guys. But if you have to give up one of your core pieces for a guy whose value is honestly at its lowest point since he got drafted, it's nonsensical to me from that point of view. I don't think Ben Simmons is bad by any chance, any stretch of the imagination. But I do think that a lot of people are placing his value too low, and the Sixers are placing his value too high. And it's understanding where that middle ground is realistically going to be.
Yeah, and I can't blame Daryl Morey for trying to pump the tires and trying to swing for the fences, because you never know if a team is desperate enough to make that move. Basically, it kind of feels like the whole NBA is on watch of like, all right, who's desperate enough for a shakeup that they're going to throw some assets at Ben Simmons in hopes that it works somehow in a deal. But you have to consider the possibility that it might not work and it might not fit. So I think any kind of player can be good on their own in terms of just in a vacuum. You're like, Ben Simmons is a really solid player. But if you put him in a situation that highlights his inefficiencies like it is in Philly, and that's not really like his fault necessarily. It is on him to develop the 3-point shot or even just a stable jumper. But a lot of that's also coaching and building out the rest of the roster. But like you said, if you're having him as a number 2, he can't provide what you need him to provide. And I honestly don't, it's not surprising to me to see that he's like where he's at right now in terms of his frustrations, being down on himself. Like, it is a brutal market, and he's kind of had this rough for the past few years. And I'm hoping that he can get it right somewhere else. It's just a matter of Philly bringing that price down where someone will be at least reasonable enough to reach like that agreement.
Yeah, I mean, like, having him as a number 2 isn't the end of the world. Like, I'm not saying that he isn't talented enough to be a 1A or 1B. What I'm saying is his skill set isn't good enough. Like, it doesn't mesh with Embiid's, right? Like, you put Bradley Beal next to Ben Simmons, and all of a sudden you've got like their talent level and their skill sets really integrate excellently, because you've got a driving kick with a guy that can spot up, score after drive, and what have you. You put him next to Embiid where you need that spacing for Embiid's rim threat to really pay dividends. Having 2 rim pressuring guys with no shooting around you, where that just doesn't work, and we've seen them come undone for that. So I do think that the Celtics would benefit from Ben Simmons, but Jaylen Brown cannot be part of that deal, right? And at which point, I just don't think the Celtics have the necessary assets to attain Ben Simmons. I don't think there's anybody on this in this rotation at the moment that has developed their value to a point where you can build a trade package around them. You can't do that with Nesmith, can't do that with Pritchard, can't do that with Romeo, possibly Rob Williams, possibly, but his injury issues are, they've already got one big man. Why would a team with Embiid ever want a package centered around Rob Williams? So you have to look at it like that too. I'm intrigued. I just don't see Ben Simmons ending up in a Celtics uniform. And to be honest, until today, I hadn't really given it enough thought.
It's not one that I would have thought of either, just because the practical reason of there needs to be more shooters in Boston. Like, they need playmakers, and defense is always good, but the primary need for Boston is off-ball shooting. Like, going into the season, it was a concern about, okay, where's your scoring coming outside of the Jays? Are you going to be leading on Marcus Smart more? Are you expecting a big leap from Romeo Langford and Aaron Nesmith? Or are you going to be getting really solid offensive minutes from guys like Josh Richardson or Dennis Schroeder? Like, you have to kind of figure out where those points are going to come from one way or another. And adding a guy like Simmons doesn't really solve any of those problems. And you have a guy who literally just doesn't shoot unless he's at the basket. And granted, like, his rim pressure is great. Like, having him attack the rim and his ability to pitch ahead in transition, like, his playmaking is excellent and it would help other guys. But in other ways, you're still limited and it's not solving issues that are already there. So I guess we kind of reached that head point where it's like, okay, it's
not happening.
Yeah, it's probably not happening. But it's an interesting thought process. But ultimately, I think that they won't go that direction.
And that wraps you up for your regular dose of Celtics content here on the Vitamin C's. I'm your host, Adam Taylor. This is your host, Tim Shields. Hit that subscribe button. We will be back on Thursday. That's not tomorrow, but it's the day after tomorrow. Catch y'all later. Actually, yeah.